we're going to go straight to the next speaker presentation. And I'm going to introduce Lauren Booth. She is a writer and broadcaster whose work appears in national newspapers and on international news sites. Lauren did embrace Islam in 2010, and she has been practicing Islam since. She now tours the globe presenting talks on topics including Islamophobia, the media, women's rights in Islam, and the ongoing struggle for the rights of the Palestinian people. She is currently working on a book about her experiences in Muslim lands and her conversion to Islam. So I'd like to call up Lauren Booth to do her presentation on the media and Muslim women.
Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be here in Newcastle the day before what's hopefully not going to be a typhoon. But I'm looking forward to some breezy weather tomorrow. It was a great presentation so far. I especially appreciated the psychology of the dehumanization. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about coming from a journalistic background, some of the way that British journalism and the media generally works creates a kind of runaway horse where stories have their own narrative and it's very hard to backtrack on them. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I come to be standing here before you in hijab, not with the face covering, but substantially different to how I would have stood here 4 years ago, and also just about our interaction as a society. Now, I have attempted to make my first ever PowerPoint. So you can laugh, but I'd probably cry if you did. And which button do I use to move forward? That one, I'll just try. All right, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that means in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, most merciful. So I've been a British columnist and journalist for almost 2 decades, and I've seen and witnessed and sometimes endured the way that the media works and the practical contexts which influence how it works. Now, it would be easy but wrong-headed to say that the media is one homogenous group with a narrative that is anti-Islam and they're going forward. Actually, narrative takes form on a subject, a theme, and a political issue for many different reasons. And there are many factors that are applied at a professional level before that comes to the fore. First of all, there is commercial competition between papers and news channels. In other words, if it sells, it will go in the papers. Although, of course, with the Murdoch empire eating up everybody else, we can say that there will just be one empire and it will be their version of events. That's the way we're moving forward. So I'm going to talk you through now how a story bubbles in the news section. And we'll look at some of the inflammatory headlines in just a moment. I have no idea what my first slide is. Oh, okay. That's about Britishness. We'll come to that in a minute. So there's a discussion. What happens is a story comes to the news section of a newspaper or a news team at broadcast level. Let's go back to newspapers. And the editor will say, which of you columnists is going to follow it up? So if it's about, say, there was a man recently who dressed up in a burqa in order to rob a jeweller's, and they will say, right, who wants to comment? Lauren, we'd like you to comment on how dangerous it is for people to wear the burqa because they can smuggle things. And you might say, yeah, I'm not really comfortable with that. They'll say, well, look, somebody's got to do it. And then you might say, well, I'll shift my opinion just to do my job and sell newspapers. So there's a lot of that kind of moral grey area going on and a lot of that pressurising going on to attend to a narrative. And, of course, there are casualties in our news agenda at the moment because of the speed of the ways that things happen. So you're encouraged to meet deadlines. You have to please your audience rather than inform them. You have to simplify the topics rather than challenge people's thought processes. You tell rather than educate. And then you've got people like Richard Littlejohn, who once threatened to headbutt me in a bar at 2 a.m, but that's another story, and that was before I was Muslim. Imagine now. Anyway, I wouldn't be in the bar, so that's good news. So during this presentation, I want to ask us all here if we're being best served by the British press and the news agencies at this time concerning Muslims, Islam, and sisters wearing the veil. I want you to ask yourselves if the British media is promoting informed debate about the building of a multicultural democracy. And within this context, what that means about the relationships between Muslims and non-Muslims. Or are newspapers promoting a bias against understanding by oversimplifying, giving insufficient information about the news background and pandering to readers' anxieties and prejudices? In fact, there was a study done several years ago that showed that all of the news agenda, if you watch American news, you come away so anxious, safest place on the world with the most food and the most of everything, and you feel like you're under attack if you watch the morning news in the hotels, as I try not to. It was interesting, you might remember in Ramadan this year that the adhan was played at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning, a time when most Channel 4 viewers are perhaps going to bed, I don't know. Or definitely the majority of British public are not up. And what did the front page of the Sun say? Ramadan a ding dong. Really trying to frighten people. This is it, we're all being called to prayer. You're all being forced into a position that you don't want to take. Unfortunately, what could have been, and was, I think, on the whole, a positive move by Channel 4, trying to reflect a deeper meaning to what Muslims are really portrayed as following, which is a faith. He said he did it to be deliberately provocative. So again, there isn't that much depth going into the thought processes controlling what you read. Now, I come from an English background. My father's an actor, my mum was a model. I grew up in the 70s in London. And I remember the conversations we'd have then and the tone of the newspapers. So, for example, at that point, they, the coloureds, were coming over here to ruin our country, take our jobs, dirty our streets. My nan, God rest her soul, I love her, she was a member of the National Front, and she would continually repeat this mantra, coming over here, take our jobs, marry white women, and gradually various minority groups here have fought to stop that poisonous echo of the past. The Stephen Lawrence inquiry led to people not using the kind of terms that were going on before, but now you can say what you like in the media about Muslims. I'm going to fast forward a bit through the Britishness to show you some of the headlines. Since 2000, UK findings showed most media reports portrayed Muslims as dangerous, willing to cut off hands for petty crimes, sexually violent to women and children, and of course terrorists. And this relates very much back to what you were saying about the dehumanization process. It's very specific. If you look at these, it's almost as if these people have read the book on dehumanization. And it's quite chilling to stand up here or to sit here as a Muslim in our community, in our national community, and think, are we all being dehumanized against Islam in this country in order for something more sinister to happen? We can pray not. But these are the kind of headlines that we see. They've stolen all our jobs. 30 million migrants took every British vacancy since 2001. Now, what happens is, most of these, by the way, were proven to be absolutely false, but a lot of them also had a grain of truth in. Okay? So that tiny grain that there haven't been that many jobs since 2001 can be turned into they've all gone to one certain race or people. Immigrants bring more crime. Strangers in their own country, Ramadan the ding dong. So those are the sort of headlines that we've been dealing with. Here's another one. Muslim sickos, Maddie kidnap shock. That was the Daily Star, 28th of April 2008. Absolute nonsense. But it got the word Muslims and Maddie in the same sentence. Okay, so let's move on to my experience. I came to Islam in 2010. I didn't really know what to expect. But I was nervous, not about my new faith, nor my new community, nor even my new clothes. I was a bit nervous about what my former colleagues and what my peers in the media would have to say. And they had a lot to say. This by Julie Birchall is pretty much representative. Poor Lauren Booth. She would do anything to get in with the tough kids. When you read this, I don't want you to think about this being about me either. I want you to think about saying this about somebody who's adopted a faith or accepted a faith. So don't think this is a personal thing. This is about faith. Julie Burchell said in that article in The Independent, which is supposedly the best newspaper we have on these sorts of issues, what sort of woman freely converts to a religion which supports the oppression, torment and murder of thousands of Christians, homosexuals and spirited women worldwide every year? The sort of woman who writes love letters to a serial killer, I reckon. Cool, that ticks all the boxes. I hate those people. They're clearly crazy. They kill Christians, we're Christians. They kill women, what if you're a woman? They kill homosexuals, thousands every year. Look at this kind of journalism. Where are the facts? Where are the figures? Where is she drawing from? Where is the editorial control over inciting people to hatred? There's nothing. I wrote to Simon Kellner, who I know personally, at The Independent. And I wrote a letter that was backed up and signed by 20 or 30 major Muslim groups in the United Kingdom. And we waited for a response that never came. He didn't even bother answering to that diatribe. Now, Peter Oborne, who actually also he writes for the Daily Mail, has done some brilliant work since around, I think it was 2011, and Dispatches actually 2008 on Channel 4, into what if you changed the word Muslim in headlines to another faith group. I had this challenge at Homeland Security in New York recently. One of the things that I have found interesting is how suddenly I've gone from a 6-foot white European member of the master race, because you do feel like you run the world when you're tall and white, I have to be honest. There's nobody going to mess with you. That's true. I've grown up like this. I was 40 before. I know what I'm talking about. And then suddenly you put this on, and you can have Americans saying to you, "Do you speak English?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm from London." "London where?" "London, England." Okay. People are confused. People are confused because this confounds expectations. So I had this tete-a-tete at Homeland Security going into New York, and I was pulled out, again, as you always are when you're in the hijab, to be dusted for explosives, which I find really offensive. I find it really, really offensive to be treated like a terrorist every time I travel. So I said to the man at Homeland Security, actually I said to my daughters, "Watch this for racism." And he took me out of the queue, and he said, "We're just going to pat you down." I said, "Yeah, okay, racism." He said, "Excuse me, ma'am, you calling me racist?" I said, "Yeah, I kind of am." He said, "What do you base that on?" I said, "Okay, look at that queue. If you took every black man out of that queue and checked him for a knife, would that be racist?" "Hell yes, that would be." I said, "Okay, you were going through that queue and taking every woman in a headscarf who's Muslim out, and you're checking us for explosives. Why is that different? Why have we all learnt to accept that we are walking ticking time bombs rather than we are people with talents, with eyes, with ears, with children, with jobs, with an input into society?" And that's at the main port. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm interested as well to see how my daughters are finding it as Muslims in this country now. My daughters are 10 and they are 13. My eldest has said she wanted to wear hijab. I actually tried to put her off wearing it. I said, "You're too young. You don't have to wear it until you are after puberty. That's when you should wear it. And even then, I wouldn't compel you to wear it." She said, "Mum, don't try and stop me wearing hijab. I love hijab." And my little one, she sometimes wears it too. In January this year, we were at a very posh gym, and my daughters were changing in the toilets in order to be modest rather than the open cubicles. And a woman kicked the door in and said, "Modest? You don't have the right to be effing modest. when you're blowing up effing buildings. I couldn't believe it. My daughters came round crying. These are little English children with blonde hair, but because they've accepted Islam, now they're effing terrorists. The police reacted really well. The organisation at the gym reacted really well. But what struck me was that the women in the gym ganged together to protect this woman. I went up to them and I said, you know, this is an attack on my daughters. They said, yeah, we know. It's kind of sort of sorry, but, you know, kind of right, really. What? Sorry, what? Well, you know, kind of Muslim. What? I could not get a single woman to speak to the police who'd heard the attack on behalf of my daughters. They had become dehumanized. They'd become the other. I'm going to wrap up fairly soon, but I want us to think as well, apply our critical thinking. Let's see what else we've got here. Onto what's being done to our minds by the British media. Unmasked, burqa raiders who admitted Selfridge's smash and grab. This idea that the veil should be banned for these ladies here and all the women who choose to wear it, and there aren't a great many number in the UK, by the way, because men might commit crimes. Okay, ban Spider-Man masks. Because actually I'm sure that they have been used in more crimes. It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. We need to apply critical thinking. A Muslim veil ban in schools and courts. Okay, we can discuss the courts things later. I haven't got time to go into that. But I think we should talk about the issue in hospitals because it's been brought up at the political level. There has been some talk by government ministers about the need to make some kind of legal statement about women not being able to cover in if they are doctors or psychologists or surgeons. Okay? And most people would say, you know what, I want to see those people's face. And I think that's a perfectly natural reaction. You do want to have interaction with your doctor. You do want to have interaction with your nurse. But I want us to think about who is creating the question about this. Everybody here, can you please put up your hand if you've ever been treated by a woman in the veil who's a dentist? Hands up. Okay. Okay, there's a sister at the back. Okay. Can anybody here put your hands up if you have been seen at a hospital by a woman in the veil? Hands up. It's one woman and one man. Okay. So out of this whole room, 3 people. This is not a common thing. And I'll tell you, the sisters will explain why later. Because, sorry, no, it's not your time to speak. Please have some respect. Thank you so much. Thank you. No. You're being rude now, please. Thank you. You will get your chance. You're invited here to talk, but so am I. Yeah. So the point here is that there is a false fear being created. If you are in a very modest frame of mind, you're not necessarily going into a workplace where you're going to be alone with a man and handling people's bodies and seeing and being in a different environment. You're not going to do that. So it's being politically used.
Ask a question and the police come up and strike havoc.
So I would like it that Muslim sisters like this don't feel that they are on the front line of having difficulties. Okay, I'm going to skip forward. A last thought. The General Medical Council, the Royal College of Nursing and the National Union of Teachers all said that they didn't collect numbers on niqab wearing professionals, and that to the best of their knowledge there had never been a case where niqab was mentioned as an issue. So therefore we can see that it's being inflated in the media and by politicians. And again, let's apply critical thinking. We are currently in an age where this government is putting forward austerity measures on all of our society and all of our resources. Isn't it very, very good timing to say, look over there, everybody. There's something over there that isn't really happening, but you should definitely be looking at it. And don't look at the fact we're going to be closing your hospitals, your A&Es, and So this is actually a very old tactic that's used. Final thought. Yep, 2 minutes. When we're talking about controlling what women wear, where do we draw the line? Where are the ethics in this? What makes us comfortable or uncomfortable about seeing a woman in public? I used to go out in very revealing tops. It was just something that I was used to doing. And I do remember being one of those women who would wear low-cut tops, and if a man looked, I'd say, "Excuse me, talk to my face." Now, how perverse is that? To put something on display in front of a man's face when you know what their reaction will be and then tell them to look away from it. My point is, I was making one man, maybe many men, uncomfortable with deliberate forethought. Don't think that these sisters are being deliberately provocative in your streets, in all of our streets. They're just being who they are. They're not making a stand against something. They are being themselves, being comfortable. And it would be better for all of us if we can allow that to exist and to continue making Britain the comfortable, beautiful, tolerant society that we've had. That, especially up north, I've noticed now that I live in Manchester. Here's some comments of girls and what they feel now at university. Sexism is rife on our campuses. What is my uni doing to combat Freshers' Week sexism, hiring half-naked women to dance on stage? Everyday sexism, someone on my Facebook had just used the phrase, if it's not rape if it's freshers. Luckily, not at my uni. That seems to be it. And that's just a final picture to show you the differences about the way that people dress. So I urge us all to apply critical thinking. And I thank you all for being here tonight and listening so kindly. Okay, salam alaikum.